is the 77 WABC minicast.
I was very happy to see President Trump on Truth Social yesterday. I follow that thing. Every couple of minutes I go there. There's always something great. And yesterday he lowered the boom on a whole bunch of folks that I complain about every day on this show. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, and most recently Megyn Kelly. I tried with Megyn. I was honest with Mark Levin yesterday. Levin and I are very, very close. We talk, I would say, on average, 5 days a week. That's not exaggeration. 5 days a week. And I said, I knew she was calling you a penis on Twitter. I said, but I gave her a shot. I waited the longest with Megyn. She was on this show, how long ago, Justin? Not that long ago, right? Like a month ago?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah. But I'm done with her. That's it. I gave her every opportunity, but she's so in love with Tucker. It's just, and Candace, I can't take her anymore. So I wrote her off. And when President Trump just hammered all of them on Truth Social yesterday, I found it to be erotic. For me, it was erotic. So John Solomon is a great guest. He's usually on with Katz and Cosby. He's not here often, but I really enjoy his work, justthenews.com. And here's a story that says Trump blasts conservative media elites, Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, as folks with low IQs. That's what he said. John Solomon, you've got anything but a low IQ. You're a very, very smart guy, but I'm glad that President Trump has come along. We've known this now for weeks, some of us months, people like Mark Levin a half a year. It's nice to see President Trump join us, don't you think?
Listen, it's so important that we get back to factual conversations and not things that drive clicks and drive maybe some podcast audience. It's clear that the four that the president singled out have been kind of all over the map intellectually on where they stood. First, they're for President Trump, and they're against President Trump. They think that the United States made this decision solely because Israel bamboozled us. It's just simply not true. When you get to the factual basis, those of us who actually have focused on the facts, the reason the president moved towards this Israeli operation was he had actionable intelligence that Iran was escalating its missile program. Three very important things that don't get talked about enough. It wasn't Netanyahu trying to bamboozle us. Yeah, Netanyahu was at the table. But the decision points were, one, Iran had approached China about getting a hypersonic missile, a very dangerous weapon that could reach the United States, could reach Europe, and is very hard to defend against anti-missile capabilities we currently have. It travels faster than the speed of sound. Two, they bought a whole bunch of Stinger missiles from Russia, things that can shoot down planes. You never want Islamic terrorists or radicalists having that. And then three, there was intelligence that they had some mid-range ballistic missiles they had developed on their own, and that came true early in the conflict when they hit Diego Garcia base with a longer-range missile than Europe thought they had, and that meant they could reach many European capitals. That escalation of missile technology, plus the fact that they were beginning to resume their nuclear program, albeit they were set back 2-3 years, were the decision and pressure points that President Trump said, hey, that's too big a danger for the United States, for our assets in the region, for our allies in the region, and that's what drives this decision. But these show hosts, those who want to get audience and make money off of their opinions, they ignore those facts and they try to create conspiracy theories. And I think the President Trump has just had enough of that. We got to get back to facts. And I'll just tell you one other story real quickly. I got to interview George H.W. Bush towards the end of his life. He told me this amazing story, and I think for conservatives today, this may be a very important lesson. He had picked, when Ronald Reagan picked him as his running mate in 1980, after they had had a very bitter 80 primary. I mean, they were calling each other names. It was a rough and tumble 1980 primary. He picks George H.W. Bush, Reagan does, and they sit for breakfast, and at the very end of their conversation, as they're getting ready to go out on the campaign trail, George H.W. Bush says to the president, Governor, is there anything you want me to know before I go on the trail? And Reagan smiled, looked back at him and said, George, I think you're going to get this. You're a military man. I think you're going to understand this. If you're in my foxhole and you ever pull the pin on a hand grenade from now on, you throw it on the other guys. And I think there's some really brilliant wisdom today, conservatives, maybe to make some extra money. Yeah. We blow ourselves up when, in fact, what we should really be focused on are those that cause us harm and are causing harm to America. So Reagan's wisdom 40, 50 years later still holds true.
Well, it's true. You know, the Democrats are one animal, but when you have your own side continuously coming at you, and I'll say this, John Solomon, when somebody tells you they're not an anti-Semite, You could probably bet you're laughing. You can probably bet they are. So when Tucker and Megyn, they get so offended. What do you mean anti-Semite? I'm anti-Zionist. When somebody tells you they're anti-Zionist, trust me, John, they're anti-Semitic. When somebody tells you we're doing this because of Bibi and Israel, that they make all of our decisions. When somebody tells you that Jeffrey Epstein is alive and well, and right now he's sitting at a cafe in Tel Aviv, and then they try to tell you they're anti-Semites, that's what these people do. They create all these stories. They find a way to blame Israel for everything from Jeffrey Epstein to the Iran war, and they look at you in the face and say, but I got nothing against the Jews.
Every generation has had its snake oil salesman, and we have a generation now doing the same thing. It's different tools, right? We have social media, we have podcasts, whatever we want to call them. But at the end of the day, there's always a group of people that will say whatever it takes to make money, whether it's true or not. I think there's a lot of that going on in the world today. That said, the American people are pretty smart. They get what's going on. They know the 47 years of horror that we've faced at Iran's hands, beginning with the taking of our embassy in '79 and all the thousands of Americans who were maimed and killed by Iran since, including all those soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq that were killed by Iran-inspired and Iran-made IEDs. We have a big score to settle, and I think President Trump has humbled Iran enough to get this conversation that's going on in a few hours in Islamabad. And what stronger statement could the president make about how serious he is? He sent his son-in-law, his top diplomatic troubleshoot negotiator, and his vice president. Vice president's going to be sitting with the Iranians. That hasn't happened in decades.
John, so, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this. You're a much smarter guy than me, and I love Trump just like you do, maybe even more. It's a waste of time. Just stop it. Well, he should have just Tuesday night did what he was threatening to do. He should have just done it. We've had these meetings. We had a lot of these meetings, too, in Israel as well. And I'm going to blow Gaza up and blah, blah, blah. Iran has proven time and time again, tomorrow's not going to matter. Doesn't matter who he sends. He needs to send that message. He didn't do it Tuesday. He needs to do it, John. Like I just told KT, Brian Kilmeade, and many others all over my Twitter. He needs to send that message that he was tweeting about for weeks. He needs to send it sooner than later.
Yeah, listen, he's not going to. The sand clock on this negotiation is very short. It's this weekend, and the Iranians can't play any games. There is one thing I picked up with intelligence from foreigners and our own intelligence agencies the last couple of days. Iran internally is being captured talking about that they are truly defeated and they don't have a plan to continue the war. I think that may be a significant opportunity. I think that's why Trump is giving it 1 ounce of oxygen to just exhaust and see one more time. But he won't tolerate the cat and mouse. He won't tolerate the rhetoric. Either make a deal or get bombed to smithereens next week. And I think that's the moment we're in. But there is a lot of intel that the Iranians are beat down in a way that they've never been beaten down in the history of their crazy Islamist theocracy. We'll see what happens, but the president has a very short soft clock and a sand clock. It's this weekend, or we're back to finishing the job.
That's it, right. And two things have to happen. In particular, open the strait, don't allow four ships through in 2 days, and stop enriching uranium. You know, John, I guess for a lot of us, the most disappointing part of this war is not that Iran hasn't abided by the rules. They never have. Going back to that awful, ridiculous deal that Obama and Kerry put together. Right. They never do. They never listen.
Nope.
But Europe, certain countries, you know, Starmer's a wuss. I can't stand him. I'm not surprised. Macron is the worst in the world. Germany, too. But when you have countries like Spain and Italy, John Solomon, are you not shocked?
Yeah, I am. I think Italy may have been a little misreported. I think there's a little bit of there was a little bit of procedural issues that made it look like Italy was defying us. Spain absolutely gave us the middle finger. I think there will be a historic consequence. It's something that the president knows he has to do anyway strategically. We need to focus more of our military resources and our security interest into the Pacific. And at the same time, it's time to punish Europe for its lack of support of us, its lack of engagement with us. They want us to do everything, and then when we call on them, they're almost never there for us. I think what you'll see, I don't think we'll end NATO immediately. I think we're like a 47-year married couple. We're always crapping and always bitching at each other. But at the end of the day, we're probably going to stay together. But the president is going to take one of the most punishing actions he can take. He's going to close down a lot of the bases where our troops are, right, as this Ukraine war is going on. that is not only a security wake-up call for them, it's also an economic wake-up. Our soldiers and their families spend lots of money in Europe. He's going to punish the Europeans in a way that they're not even beginning to imagine. They're going to wake up one day and say, boy, we need the American troops in. They're like, nope, they're over in the Pacific now, or they're over somewhere else where American interests are stronger. Europe is going to wake up with a great amount of regret a few years from now.
Good. I hope they do.